So we're going to continue. I kind of was preemptive to start the activity, but we have a few more slides we got to jump through before we get to that part. So, because you're going to need to know the selection aspect as well. So, when we get to selection, so how to choose the best person for the job, there's all kinds of different things you'll look at. Application forms and resumes can be definitely susceptible to dishonesty. Um, they're not always giving you useful information, and background checks can possibly lead to discrimination, but they are super important. Like, for instance, where I work at the nonprofit, we work with kids, and ultimately, if we go into like the Des Moines public school system or Waukee or Ankeny or any of those other places, people are required to have a background check, and they're not allowed to, like, for instance, if you have a um, any type of, what is it called, no record for, okay, someone who has gotten taken to prison for things like child molestation or other things like that, they're not allowed to be within so many feet of a school. So background checks are really important for that reason, and to make sure that we are keeping we're getting people, even our volunteers have to go through background checks because it's that important. So for testing, um, according to testcandidates.com, which is a magazine, 61% of the companies found that it's important, and they would use some sort of psychometric test. And the figure is rising. 75% of the top 100 companies use it. So there's a lot of different recruitment tests. There's personality tests to see if they fit within a team or the setting within the company. Behavioral assessments looks at your personal attributes, how you analyze things, interpersonal skills, leadership skills, and a workplace scenario. Cognitive ability looks obviously at logic, verbal, numerical thinking. They also have numerical tests, which are like multiple choice tests to analyze the employee's potential critical thinking or if they're good at specific types of numbers. Coding tests are designed to assess a potential candidate's coding abilities. So whether it's JavaScript, which doesn't JavaScript is actually easier than learning Python, or PHP. Ultimately, these tests give an employer an opportunity to see how well they do technically. There's a role-based tests as well, situational judgment tests. They're pre-employment tests designed to assess their skills and how they would handle something. Verbal reasoning, which is a piece of writing. The candidate assesses their cognitive reasoning and comprehensive abilities. Remote work assessments, language proficiency assessments, background checks, logical reasoning checks. I've seen all kinds of checks, but those are just, like I said, to name a few of them because there are quite a few out there, just to name a couple. So, something to think about there as well. All right, so let's jump into selection for interviews, and then we will take a break. I'll have you guys take a break and then come back and do the activity. So, sorry I jumped the gun there. All right, so unstructured interviews and structured. So, an unstructured interview is when somebody comes in and you just sit down, you start asking them questions. You don't pre-check any of the material. You have it sitting right in front of you like, "Hey, let me check your resume." And then they just randomly start throwing out questions. There's no actual studying or prep for that one, pretty much. So just ordinary conversations. Structured interviews include situational interviews based on like different types of situations you might run into, behavioral description interviews. Um, Ultimately, depending on who you are and what the company's about, you may have a structured interview and you may also have um, a behavioral. So I already talked about some of these tests. I did not mention there's physical abilities as well. I didn't mention for some jobs you need to be able to lift or carry things, etc. So that's a physical test to make sure you can do the job. Drug and alcohol screening, criminal and financial background checks um, are becoming more and more common. I do want to mention that if you are a person who's on a medication that would show up as an actual illicit drug, like for instance, if someone has ADHD, you would need to give that to the information and take the prescription in to the person doing the testing so you don't get in trouble because there are some medications that show up that way. Okay, so um, I'm going to have you guys take a break now. I'll just have you pause the video. We're on slide 16, and I'll let you guys do that first activity. And then I'm just going to, after that first activity, please make sure that you review everything, discuss it as a class, and everyone needs to hand that in up front because I will be getting the physical copies of it. So get that up there with your name on it. I would super appreciate that. All right, quick pause. Okay, so let's start with managing an effective workplace. So, compensation and benefits. I mean, there's so many different things that you can be compensated for, so many different benefits out there. So, wages, salaries, incentives, and benefits are the things that they looked at. So, depending on what your job is. So, compensation can be in many different ways. Of course, there's a base pay, which consists of the base average or salary paid to the employee. There's also required overtime. There's commission pay where you only get paid a commission. I mean, there's a lot of different types of pay. There's contract pay. There's pay after you do the job. So, for instance, when I worked at Upper Iowa University, I didn't get paid until I was done teaching the whole class. One of my employees works for the Des Moines Arts Center. She doesn't get paid until after all of the art classes she teaches. I think she usually has like 4 to 6 weeks, and she gets paid afterwards. So, note that if you're going to get hired, check and see when they get paid. Next is incentives such as commissions, bonuses, profit sharing, um, stock options, high performing employees, and motivation. My younger brother works for he's an operations manager for a telecommunications company, and every year or every 2 years, they go down to their boss's tropical location and they all hang out there for a week and really have a good time, have a party, enjoy the weather, etc. And that's just a basic incentive for working there, which is different. So depending on where you work depends on those incentives. So and depends on how you get paid. And then we have benefits or fringe benefits, which are usually non-monetary aspects like compensation designed to enrich people, paid time off, retirement, all kinds of insurances. So many short-term disability, long-term disability. There's also critical illness. So I'm going to pull up a couple of them because it's kind of important. There's a lot more now than there ever were before. So, and I didn't really think about pulling them, but I'm going to. So, 27 different benefits. And I also want to mention that when you get hired by someone, especially in when it comes to a company, You need to allot those benefits in as well as the income you get paid to balance out if you should take a job. Throw that out there. And as an employee, you have to make sure that what you offer is beneficial for the company and you can afford it as well. So let's go to the benefits. So obviously, medical coverage is one that's normally given. It's just how good of the cost. There's usually three tiers. We have the one where people go like once a year. We have a second tier where you don't go quite as much, where you still need the insurance. And then you have the top tier, which is where you pay more money, but you go to the doctor a lot more. So you always have to check on those things. So if you run into that issue with your first full time job, I would read carefully, ask questions, and talk to someone you trust if you're not sure. All right, dental insurance is offered for some locations as well. And I'll be honest, dental insurance is amazing because it costs so much to go to the dentist now. Vision insurance is also a benefit as well. Normally, you get 1 year, you get an eye exam, you get one prescription lens, and then you pay out of pocket for uh, all of your contacts. There's multiple types of life insurance, anything from short term, long term, group term, extended life coverage. So it's kind of it usually lasts. Normally, most companies will give you between $10,000 and $50,000 that you'll have a beneficiary if something were to happen to you on the job, or you pass away when you work there. Your family gets that money, or whoever your beneficiary. It could be a friend. You don't know. So other types is prescription and pharmacy benefits, and if they cover certain medications or not. It's a good thing to know. Specialist services, if they're covered, how much they are. That can be anything from like a dermatologist to someone who is a chiropractor, somebody who does specialty aspects. They handle also mental health coverage based on the company. Next is retirement planning. So this is important. There isn't very many people who get pensions anymore. One thing you should know, which I find really interesting, and the only reason I know this is because I know someone who experienced this. Um, so if you have IPERS, which is the state of Iowa employment retirement, they can't take it. So if you owe back money, or if you are getting older and you need to be put in a nursing home and you don't have any additional money, the retirement place can't take your IPERS. It's held back and it's actually used for other things. So it's an interesting thing I saw. Also, it depends on the insurance that you have. So there's common 401k, IRA, and then the simplified SEP, and then 403b retirement plans. So, and there are others. Next is paid time off. Who doesn't like some paid time off? Normally this is something you accumulate daily or weekly, and it helps if there's doctor's appointments or you can't be in a day. Paid vacation time, depending on where you work, depends on how long it is or if you get it at all. A paid sick leave, extended leave, which is different from paid sick leave because it accounts for a longer time away from work for medical reasons. Then, of course, family leave. Family leave, we already talked about. Disability benefits. It ensures that the employee is salaried in the event that they sustain an injury or become ill and can't work. And some employers may offer temporary disability insurance plans that provide income support while you're off work. For instance, my mom works for a factory called Raymond Donko, and she had a total knee replacement in September, and she just got allowed to go back to work. And they said they would call her back in January, but she's still getting unemployment the entire time. Then we have workers' compensation. We have the living stipends, which is part of the benefits package. Employees have to relocate to fill a position at the company. Depending on the company, as employees may receive a monthly or yearly stipend to cover those expenses or moving fees or a home office setup. A student loan repayment is a new one that's being used a lot within companies. Some have college grants or scholarships or free college tuition reimbursement, paid training and development to certain things, continuing education allowances for that um, professional development, travel, spending expenses, company equipment, company transportation, and you name it. There's just a ton. And that's just naming a couple of them. There's so many of them. So I want to throw that out there. So many of them. I need to get it. There we go. All right, where was I? Okay. Benefits, no small cost. Benefits are no small cost. On the average, this was 2022. The private industry spent $39.61 per hour. Um, Someone worked in employment compensation, in which wages and salaries accounted for 70.5%, and benefits remained at 29.5%. So keep that in mind. I am not meaning to yawn, but I had some severe issues with my computer earlier, and I had my other job too late. So I'm running really late in the morning on this. Okay, so onboarding and learning development. So for onboarding, it's helping newcomers learn the ropes. So onboarding is a really positive thing if you have the right people who help with onboarding. Programs designed to integrate and transition employees into new jobs and organizing through familiarization, familiarization. Got it, with corporate policies, procedures, cultures, and politics, and clarification of work role expectations and responsibilities. So it's important to really have a team when it comes to all the different things that a person needs to do where they come together and help with different parts. You need to clarify those expectations to the new employees, and then have them put the pieces together and make sure, give it, for some things you just need to give a little time. So the goal of learning and development, or L&D, is to fill the gaps that that exist between employees currently know and what they need to know. So normally they determine that skill gap. So they do an assessment and say, hey, there's a skill gap. The objectives are identifying learning goals that would reduce skill gaps. So develop learning and development materials to be used to achieve them. Then you'll actually execute them and evaluate and go around the corner again. So I'll give you an example. For me, um, I'm really not good at this program called Neon CRM. I can do the basic aspects, but it's not a very ease of use consumer relationship management software. It's used specifically for nonprofits, and I've had 2 years experience so far, but I don't have as much experience at using a customer relationship software, a management software. So I'm going to be doing a lot of training in the next year to really master the entire software. So I'll be able to be that person who's able to send people where they need to go. All right, so next is performance management. So it is defined as a method of processes and managerial behaviors that involve defining, monitoring, measuring, evaluating, and providing consequences for performance expectations. So, of course, these have steps too. So many steps. So, I apologize. Keep that in mind. There are a lot of steps. Step one, not surprised, but they're going to actually define what the performance are. They're going to set goals and communicate performance expectations with the employee or with that person. We're expecting you to be at 60% in the first month. I expect you to complete the 90-day program, and here are the specific aspects that are important. Monitor and evaluate. So after you figure out what something that someone needs to work on, you measure and you come up with a SMART goal, and then evaluate the progress and the outcomes of what you did. If that doesn't work, guess what? You are going to try something different and do the steps all over again. So, last is obviously providing consequences. So, whether it's rewards or a punishment, performance management is very important. So, the appraisal itself or a performance review of a management process that consists of A, assessing employees' performance, and B, providing them feedback. So, some new approaches to performance appraisals have emerged across two important research findings, and that is frequent feedback is best, and feedback should be future oriented. So, when it comes to a performance appraisal, I'll be honest with you, I've had a few bosses over the years that give me one a year. I don't remember that. I don't even remember the goals for that year. So having, meetings every month, every few weeks, every couple months will really help people stay on track to reach those goals, especially people who are not as goal oriented or people who need that person as a mentor to help them get through certain things that they're struggling with within the workplace. All right. So there's two kinds of performance appraisals. Not a big surprise. We have objective and subjective. So objective appraisals measure desired results, and they're harder to challenge legally because they're objective. Subjective is the trait appraisals and behavioral appraisals. So So when it comes to objective, they can get specific metrics and numbers to come up with a percentage. Subjective is really the traits they see, the behaviors they see, and then they sit down and discuss this with you. Down here at the bottom, they have a behaviorally anchored rating scale or bars that rates employees gradations and performance according to scales of specific behaviors. So some of it is subjective. I mean, ultimately, you make a decision based on what you know and what you've heard, and some are more based on metrics. Others that you will see is the peer subordinate customer and self, uh, where you get one from all these different people and you do it yourself. The 360-degree assessment has multiple sources. So for that one, employees are appraised not only by their managerial peers or by their managers, but also by their peers, by their subordinates underneath them, and sometimes even clients. So you're getting a perspective, like a 360-degree around perspective, to see every component of what you do well and things you need to work on. And then last but not least is called forced ranking, which is grading on a curve. All employees within a business are ranked against one another, and then the grades are distributed along some sort of bell curve, such as students being graded for a college course to see where they're at. Same thing with an appraisal. So when you're giving feedback, it's really important to do it. Really, really important to do it. One of those things you can do is take a problem solving approach, really avoid criticism, and treat the employees with respect, because ultimately everybody has their positives and their negatives and things they need to work on. So, strengths and weaknesses, basically. So, it's really important to talk about what they did well, things that maybe they're struggling with. So, be respectful, be specific and direct, give them details on their current performance, and literally SMART goals on things that they can improve and when you want to see that improvement. Then get the employees' input on what they think they did well and things that they need to prove on. And then make sure you follow up. A big thing with performance feedback is following up afterwards. All right. So we're going to come back to promotions. in a few. Um, the next assignment, if you guys have gotten to this point that you need to work on, dun, da, da, da. And if you need any of these actual links, they're going to be located in week 5, and they're already there. So, okay. So here, the next assignment you guys are going to work on is actually employee selection. So, no, it's not. We're doing assessing training needs. You guys are doing the selection first. Okay, so for the training needs, okay, a general manager of a auto dealership has hired you to help improve the performance of its services. And after each week, the service call customers are asked to complete a customer satisfaction survey. And then, as you can tell, they're going to do that. They're going to put it together. The surveys are broke up into 3 areas: their satisfaction with the quality of the service on their vehicle, their satisfaction with the timeliness, and was the car ready when you actually were promised, and the perception of the courtesy of the people and how you were treated. And then you would fill that out, and then based on this scenario you need to write a 1 or 2 page report based on several things. And you could do this in a group or individually, it's up to you. It's 1 page if you are individual, and 2 plus if you have more than 2 people. So, what steps would you take in order to assess the training needs for this auto dealer? So, what would you do specifically? Okay. What type of assessment? What would be the name of it? Do a little bit of research. How do you determine who should be trained and what areas? So, specific details on how you would actually figure that out. And last but not least, what training method or activities would you recommend under the influence of the behavior of the staff? So, uh, ultimately, I will have you guys work on that. I will come back and do the last part of this. Again, if there is time at the end of class after you completed these aspects, and if you have any questions, get a hold of me. Okay, make sure that you also turn in this assessing trade needs, which means tomorrow you guys will have some information to go over, and then after that the speaker is at 8:30, and we will move on to the wonderful Jeopardy challenge on Monday. So I will be back the end of this slide. Holy cow, hold on. I need to jump out of here. It's not telling me. Is that it? Yep. So we are at number 29. So keep that in mind. I probably have another like 15, maybe 20 minutes left. So have an amazing day, and I'll see you guys on Thursday, unless you're listening to this on Thursday, and I'll be there on Friday morning. Email me if you have questions. Have a great day.